day 41 of hiking the Appalachian Trail in 100 days. First few miles in Pennsylvania today, and they said Pennsylvania was supposed to be rocky, and I can tell you this right here is not rocky. I'm sure it'll get more difficult. The first like 2 miles were actually more difficult. I had about 1,000 feet of climbing, and there was plenty of rocks there, but then it just smoothed out right here, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on? From what I've heard and gathered, and from all the people I've listened to, it sounds to me like the rocks are annoying and they kind of hurt your feet a lot, but you can still do plenty of miles, and it's not like a super big issue. And I'm hoping that my boots help me, because a lot of people just have kind of hiking shoes, trail running shoes, that kind of thing, and my boots definitely have more support and sole underneath, so I'm hoping that helps me just not have as much foot pain, I guess. But got about 15 miles this morning, and then we'll get to a road and head into Wind Gap, Pennsylvania, and get a resupply from the post office there. And then after that, got like 5 more miles to the campsite shelter. So only about 20 miles today. We'll see how it goes. I might hang out in town a little bit and stuff like that if I have time, but we'll see. Some haze over the valley this morning. Just about 6-ish miles in, so 9 more to town. And got a little grassy section here. That's interesting. Actually not entirely sure where the trail goes, but I'm assuming it's kind of this way, where it seems like there's a path through the grass. Just had a very funny encounter with a SOBO. He said I was the first SOBO he met, and I said, oh, you didn't see a guy like a day ahead of me? And he said, no, I downloaded Tinder and I've been off trail for 2 days. And honestly, I didn't expect to hear that from anyone ever, honestly, on the trail. Something like that never even crossed my mind, that would happen, I guess. But guess he's enjoying himself. He said it's after doing that, it's hard to get back on trail, which is not surprising, I guess. Got up to these rocks and these birds are just sitting here. Not even sure what kind of birds they are, but they're pretty neat looking. Oh my goodness, this deer is just not scared of me at all. I've actually seen 4 or 5 deer this morning already, but it's later in the morning now. And this deer just does not seem to care. So maybe it's used to seeing hikers along the trail, I don't know. But that's interesting. There's certainly been some rocky sections here, but so far it hasn't been super bad. There's also been a fair bit of quite flat and smooth terrain, smoother than this even. This is kind of, I would call this a tiny bit rocky. Try to get some video of some of the more rocky sections, but it's really not bad at all. I'm still hitting like definitely below 24-minute miles, which is 2.5 miles an hour. Not quite averaging the 3 miles per hour I was yesterday, but that's totally expected. I wouldn't really expect myself to average 3 miles an hour many days on the trail at all. So a decently rocky section here, but again, not too bad. It's hard to tell, you know, if this is like what the rocks of Rocksylvania is all about, or if it gets like way harder at some point, or, you know, not really sure. I think, you know, in this range is kind of the rocks of Rocksylvania that people complain about or talk about. But I think it's mostly the northern half of Pennsylvania that is harder, and then the southern half is not as bad, so we will see. So I made it to the road leading into town about 11:15 this morning, and was actually able to hitchhike to the post office. It was less than a mile, but some guy picked me up pretty quickly actually. And then I got my package at the post office, and I was gonna go about a mile further into town to McDonald's and just sit there for a while and charge stuff and get a little bit of food and edit and post some videos, stuff like that, since I had some time. And a lady at the post office was talking to me about the trail, and then she offered me a ride. So she drove me to McDonald's, and I had a little bit of food there, packaged up my post office resupply into my backpack, all that stuff. And I was there at McDonald's a little less than 2 hours, I think. And then I started walking back to the trail, and some guy picked me up and drove me there within a few minutes. So PA has been super great for me for hitchhiking so far. Got just a few miles, like 4 miles probably, left to the campsite and shelter. The guy that drove me back said he's done some section hikes, and there might not be much tenting or good tent spots at the shelter. So if that's the case, I might go on a little further and find something else, but we'll see what we can find at the shelter. One of the challenges in Pennsylvania as well, especially this time of year in the summer when it's hot, is getting water. There's not many you know, rivers or creeks, streams. It's a lot of springs, and those tend to dry up in the summer. So at this particular campsite I'm staying at, there's a series of springs going down a hill, and of course the further down the hill you get, the better the springs are. So the first 2 springs are dry at this campsite, so you have to go further down. And the third one is actually pretty good. It's actually really good. There's lots of nice flow and some cascades, and you can fill your stuff up real quick. But it's close to a half mile from the place where my tent is, so it's a little annoying. I went down earlier, and I should have brought another bladder I have, filled that up as well, but I didn't. So I cooked my dinner and drank some water and filtered some more water and stuff like that. And I'm going back down to fill up my 2-liter bladder again for the morning, so I have some water. I have 2 liters of filtered water in my water bottles up at the campsite, but I'll use some water, close to half a liter, for cooking my breakfast ramen and cleaning the pot. And then probably want to drink some in the morning and maybe throughout the night. And then I like to leave camp with a full 2 liters. And tomorrow I'll probably just leave whatever unfiltered water I have left in my pack, just because there's not much water ahead. I do think there's a water cache, from what I hear, that's pretty good and maintained about 10 miles south of where I am now, so it shouldn't be too bad. But then between there and the next shelter, there's not really any water, and the water at the next shelter isn't great either. I think it's a similar situation to this, where you gotta walk down a trail and there might not be great springs. So water is definitely a little bit of a challenge in Pennsylvania, but I'm dealing with it. Today was a pretty good day. The afternoon, last 5 miles were actually kind of tough. I just had a blister on my foot that wasn't really like warming up, and it was just hurting a lot. And so I was just kind of going slow and like babying it almost. And then there was definitely more rocks more frequently than in the morning, so that slowed me down as well. But we still got to camp before 4 o'clock and ate dinner, put my bear bag up, set up my tent, all that. It's pretty hot, so hopefully I'll be able to sleep tonight decently well. I feel rather tired actually, so definitely want to get some sleep. And tomorrow should be a fun day. Close to 25 miles, and I know there's for me it's a descent, a pretty steep and rocky section into Lehigh Gap over the Lehigh River. A few days ago I was talking to some people and they were saying how awful it was and how difficult it was, but this lady at the campsite tonight, she was just absolutely so excited about it and said it was so fun and the views were great and everything. So it's all about perspective, you know. I'm sure it was difficult for them, but it was an adventure, and they looked at it in a positive light and were able to have fun. Today was 20.1 miles, so not all that much, but I did stop, like I said, in Wind Gap, and I was off the trail almost 3 hours. So got the package and then was just chilling at McDonald's, like I said. So good day, getting closer to Springer Mountain day by day, and getting close to that 1,000 mile mark, and then right after that will be the halfway point before I know it. And also tonight, the shelter I'm staying at is the Leroy Smith shelter, but I'm not staying in the shelter, I'm camping in my tent. Well, about 100 feet before I got to the spring, I got attacked by a few bees and stung by one right on the ankle, so that kind of sucked and was annoying, but luckily I was at the spring in just a minute and was able to soak my ankle in the ice cold water for a minute, so I think that probably helped. And it still hurts a little bit, but not really super bad, so I'm sure it'll be fine.